click the start, and we're recording. So once again, thank you all for joining. I really, really, really appreciate you guys being here. Um, I you will hear me say a big thank you and appreciation for you all being here quite a number of times because it does really mean a lot to me. But before I continue to say anything else, I am going to pass it off to Nadia here. Also saying a thank you to her for organizing this event. I want to say a big thank you to the Ukrainian National Women's League and the Association Branch 95, and to the Kurhanks Self-Reliance Association for sponsoring this event and for really making this possible. So thank you for those. And with that, Nadia, please take it away.
Okay, thank you, Matej. Thank you again from myself for you all being here with us and for watching this documentary with us. We had tried our little community in Kurhanks and had tried to do this live, I guess, in 2019. And then COVID happened, of course, to everybody. So I was happy to hear that Matej's doing these virtual ones. So we were thrilled to be able to get this out to people who might want to watch it. Just on a personal note, this documentary was really fascinating for me because those are all the stories that I heard growing up from my father and mother. My dad is 98. He was still with us. And so he watched with us as well. And Matej, he thought it was very well done. So yeah. All those stories of that resilience and those things that our parents did in those camps just always blew me away. I mean, these people had nothing, and they managed to make a life out of that horrible time. So I hope you all enjoyed the documentary, and I will be quiet and pass it back to Matej.
Thank you very much. I just want to share a big thank you for that because I think that is, absolutely special to hear that, especially from those that are still here with us. I'm going to share a lot about what I've discovered along the way here. And so with that, I just want to do a brief introduction before I really get the ball rolling here. You might, to me, she's to my left, but for some of you, she might be to the right. But I do want to introduce Julie, Julie Parker, who is our producer for the documentary. And she will be here to fill in some of the gaps that that I might not have the best answers for. As being the producer, she was behind a lot of things that are a little bit more specific to some of the budgeting, if that's of some questions or some otherwise that really, if there are any questions that are on the budgeting side of things or anything that are related to sponsorships or otherwise, I will probably be passing it off to her. But she also was there in the background with a lot of the interviews and has a lot of her own personal thoughts and opinions that I've always found to be extremely valuable. So with that said, if there are any questions along the way, chat, feel free to send those over. If there's something specific, please feel free to share it with, if you don't mind, both myself and Julie, as I might be a little bit slow in responding, just due to the fact that I will be talking a bit here. But between the both of us, I promise 2 heads sometimes are better than 1. Sometimes I only have half of a head, so it's great. She really makes things work. But with that said, дуже дякую, Nadia, thank you for sharing that, and I will get started here. So, as you guys may have seen, the documentary has been a real interesting part of my life, and I have heard numerous amounts of praise, and I'm so appreciative of that for the film. But I want to take a little bit of a step back and say that there has been quite an immense journey that has happened in the production of this film. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of the breakdown as to how this all came to fruition, and that goes all the way back to when I was first in college. Now, college for me was a really interesting time of my life because I really had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was going to do, and guess what? Some things still don't change. I have still no idea what I am doing. But with that being said, some things really mattered to me, and in my college years, a lot of things had happened, especially in the first semester. In the very first semester, my grandfather had passed away on my mother's side, and my dog at the time did as well. That's kind of unrelated, but I miss him. The thing that was really interesting, though, is that my grandfather was, he was part of World War II, and he had shared some really interesting stories, although very different and a very different perspective, that would bring some interest to the time period for myself. And I found that to be a little bit of a small diving board into what would be the large pool of information and discovery that would be the film Baba Babiška. Some of you may have heard that a lot of this actually stems more from my grandmother on my father's side, and that is also very true. Both of them experienced very different, perspectives and very different aspects of World War II. And it was that first semester with my grandfather passing away that really opened my mind up to what had actually happened in history. The reason I say that this is important, though, is because I have always disliked history. I've never been a fan of it. I did not pay attention to it in school. I mean, granted, I still did well, but it never really connected with me until my first semester. I had a few experiences in school that showed me that there was a reason to really understand history and even more so appreciate my culture. I've always loved the fact that I'm Ukrainian. That has always been extremely important to me. I think there's something really beautiful about the culture and how the culture really encourages you to hold on to that and keep it very tight. Our communities are very tight knit and they really do mean a lot. And so when I was in class and when I was in a Russian imperial history class, and the teacher tells me, German teacher at the time, that she would not accept Subtilny, who some of you might know as a primary source for one of my papers that discusses Ukrainian history. I kind of diplomatically said, "Excuse me, say what? Are you actually telling me that you will not accept this as a primary source because he's Ukrainian?" And to my surprise and disdain as well, she actually said yes, because he is Ukrainian. I will not accept him as a source. And I kind of looked at the entire situation and I said to myself, German, teaching Russian imperial history, not accepting Ukrainians. That is a pretty good reason to start really taking a look at what's actually happening here and say, this is not okay. So that, as I said, with the small little diving board with my grandfather and World War II, I started to really understand that what my grandmother had said and had told me year after year of me being a child was actually extremely important. And it really started to all hit me. I'm sure many of you have had this experience where as a child, your parents, your grandparents have told you stories about when they were younger. And maybe in some of your cases, there are certain stories that have really you've held tight, and in other cases, and I'm not shy to say this myself, that some of it's kind of gone in one ear and out the other. That happens. I think that's fairly normal. But it wasn't until this moment that I really said to myself that, wait a second, this is actually, my grandmother has told me things that now all are clicking. They're all making sense. And I know it seems pretty naive of myself to just never really believe that this kind of really honestly, this discrimination could exist, but here it is right in front of my face, and I'm getting like I'm getting a D on my paper because of discrimination. Hey, I mean, D for discrimination, I guess. That makes sense, right? Not really. And so I took this, just so that you all know, I took this, to the head, and I really, pitched my problem, if you will. But this is really what became the crux of the issue, and what made me start to realize that this was extremely important. That what my babcia had been telling me for years actually was really necessary, because as I came to find out from her stories, as well as the stories of what I was reading in my textbook, that there really wasn't a history for the Ukrainian people, for our nation, for our country, that due to what was being done by these other forces, there wasn't much to be shared except for that which was oral, that which was by the word of mouth, that which was shared from grandmother to grandmother, which is partially also where Baba Skazala comes from. And I ended up having the opportunity through a scholarship in a way, and through the Abik Ella Cabot Lyman Foundation to actually embark upon this documentary. The documentary, there was a prompt at the time via the Ella Cabot Lyman Foundation that just perfectly fit with the sharing of these stories. And I said to myself that this really has to be done. I'll share, actually, if you don't mind, I'll share a little side story that I find to just really be the kicker in the situation. I don't think I actually shared this in the last Q&A, but I think it's funny. I think it's funny thinking about it now. I was also taking a film and media course at the time, and I had actually asked the professor that I was working with if he would sign off on this, and if he would support me in this endeavor of pursuing this documentary. And he actually turned around and said, "No, I don't think you can do it. I don't believe in you." And I was pretty appalled. I mean, I don't think I had ever heard that before in my entire life. And it's in black and white, and I pretty much answered back and said, "I'm going to prove you wrong." And here we are. So all of these little things happened within my first and second semester, my first year of college. And so over time, everything's kind of been a matter of research, looking, asking questions. And the film started with my babcia. I feel like that's a pretty, solid pillar. And so with my babcia, I ended up being home between school periods, between school semesters, if you will. And I had the opportunity to go down to Florida, and I spoke with her in person. And babcia had a couple individuals that she knew in the area as well, nearby, that, actually also were interested in sharing their stories. And I learned so much about who I was, where I came from, who I was, and what it meant to be Ukrainian from her, that I almost felt at the time like how could I learn more? How could I really learn more? And to my surprise, after really speaking with 36, 37 or so interviewees over the course of the film here that every single person that I could speak with could teach me something really special about what it meant to what it meant to be Ukrainian, B, what it really meant to be a part of a community, a real community, C, the importance of history. And really, I feel like I could just go through the whole alphabet, but really, what it means to have this family. And this family doesn't mean your mom, your father, your mother, your father, your grandmother. No, it also doesn't just mean, being Ukrainian. It means everybody that was involved and has kind of a piece in this part of the history. And I'll definitely speak to that a little bit later here. But moving forwards with time, this film, a big piece of the question, a big question that I often get is where did the interviewees come from? And as I just said with my grandmother, she knew individuals, and that's one of the things that's really unique about the Ukrainian communities is that no matter where the communities may be located, somebody from somewhere knows somebody else from somewhere else. And that's really what brought the interviewees together and into the film. And to give you a breakdown of just how that worked, my grandmother led me from Florida to Pennsylvania. And from Pennsylvania, and actually my family's friends in Colorado, I know that's a little bit disconnected, we started to be able to connect pieces of the pie. And so after going back to school in California, I'm going to try to do it this way, backwards on a map. But after going back to school in California, I actually dropped down to Southern California, where our friends in Colorado actually had family members who had also been with them and actually had been separated during World War II, separated all the way through, even through the DP camps, and were not connected back with each other until they came to the United States. And from there, I ended up going down through Arizona and into Colorado, where I proceeded to have, the other side of the family connection, and seeing and learning more about that, and actually getting connected with other individuals in the Colorado, Denver area, greater Denver area, who were interested in having, having an interview done. And then from there, proceeding to Ohio, where again, more of the family connections, as well as those that I had already interviewed between Los Angeles, Southern California, and Colorado, had called up their friends and said, hey, I just did this interview. I think it would be great if. And so from Ohio, proceeding back to New Jersey, where again, more phone calls. Hey, I think it would be great if. And it still proceeds to this day, and there's still some more interviews to be done. It's really just been COVID who I talk about COVID as if it's a person, but COVID which has been putting things on hold. So I hope that kind of answers the question about where interviewees have come from, because it really is about the tight-knit community that is the Ukrainian communities that continues to kind of keep track on each other. The whole Baba Babi Skazala type of thing. I feel like, especially with Zoom, which we're all love and is our best friend these days, we all connect with each other across the country very, very well and very easily. But it's really been interesting to go through this amazing experience, and I'm going to really open it up at this point, so that I can actually address every question that you guys might have, because I feel like as far as an introduction of everything and how the film was started and where the inspiration came from, that's really important. But your questions yourselves are very vital to understanding more about the film and the importance of it, not just to myself, but also to the community, which is what the film is about. So with that being said, I would actually like to open the gates of the microphones, and please feel free to raise a hand. You can do it either virtually if we can see you, or through the reactions, and please feel free to ask any questions that you might have. And if you can hear my dog in the background, I apologize. This is what the microphone mute button's for. But please don't be shy. Otherwise, I will continue to just say little things here and there. Any questions? Any questions?
So I have a question, Matej.
Proszę.
So all of the footage and the photos, obviously historical documents.
Mhm.
Did you actually go to those archives and find those? I know the credits rolled at the end, from where a lot of them came. If you could speak to that, where those came from, did you find them, etc. Yeah.
Absolutely. Julie, I saw you raise your hand there. Would you like to answer this one?
Yeah, I can talk about that.
Yeah,
if you
absolutely.
want.
Absolutely.
A big part of the archival materials did come through the Ukrainian Museum Archives in Cleveland, which has been a huge supporter of this project, and also a source for some of the interviewees that we interviewed in Cleveland. And then in addition to that, there were 3 or 4 college age interns that we brought on for a summer for credit for their courses, who assisted in doing archival research from other sources, general sources in the US. And then one young woman in particular who was from Ukraine, but went to Columbia, actually went to the film archives in Kiev and sourced some really fantastic materials there that really never been used in a film before this one. So there were a lot of different sources, and it was a big process. But yeah, I mean, I'm very happy with how that worked out with the various archival materials. And then Matej, maybe you want to add about the animations, how that was done, because it's also a connection to someone actually in Ukraine, which from my standpoint, I really like the fact that there's this element of the coming full circle of not just people in the US doing the video and putting it all together, but we involved quite a lot of people in Ukraine and in various parts of the production side of the film.
Yes, and we'll kind of touch upon these various elements between the archival as well as the moving photography or the moving photos that you may have seen in the film. Myself, as well as a great friend of ours in Ukraine, we both ended up working on these parallax photos. And it was very interesting for us to look at these photos in 2 different ways. We were looking at how do we properly somewhat represent the situations that have gone on, but as well as how do we actually take a look at what emotions, what the imagery really was like for the interviewee that we were trying to depict that moment. And so one of the things that we thought was really interesting was to share imagine a dream. right? The dream of sometimes things are really ethereal, sometimes things feel really realistic, but it's not always exactly what exactly happened or what may have happened. And that's really what we wanted to try and depict, a sense of reality, but something that was still a little bit more out in that sort of ethereal dream sort of situation. And I think that one of the most important things about it is sharing the two different tastes as well, between my own versions of the Parallaxes, as well as Andriy Korvach's versions of the Parallaxes. And Andriy shares a really interesting side of reality, that being a very much more Ukrainian perspective, and sharing the actual locations in some of those in some of that imagery, whereas mine take on a little bit more of this sort of dreamy landscape, as though it's depicting the story in more of an epic setting. And I think that that's really unique and special because, again, kind of like the archival footage in a way, it's part of what makes archival footage so interesting is the fact that it's of its own generation and timing. And because of it, it's so different than what we have right now. It has a very different dream aspect to it, something that's really unique, that we feel like we can connect with it, but it's a little bit out of reach. It's not quite what we have right now, but we know that something like that has existed in a way. So I think thank you for Julie for bringing that up. It's really something special. And Nadia, thank you for asking the question. Zoriana, yes,
Hi.
please.
Excellent job. It was really, really good. Now I'm getting emotional because I listened to the stories my parents told and their friends and stuff like that. And I have two sons who, one may be around your age and one is younger. So the younger one just finished, he's 20, he just finished watching the movie and the other watched it yesterday. And it was important to get their perspective as well. They've heard the stories, but for them to get the perspective, they speak Ukrainian, they're very Ukrainian, they're, all about the history, they're all on top of all of that. So this was really good and very well rounded, and the visuals of the archival material, plus that, whatever term you want to use, that other ethereal kind, and then hearing the people speak and having all of that kept you interested, like you never lost interest in what was going on. I was like, that's it, it's like there's more, I know there's more to go on. So thank you for that. I thought it just was really well done. And the fact that there is obviously Ukrainian in it, but that it is in English, I really see that this can definitely be used to, I have people in my mind, I'm like, they're Americans, they're not Ukrainians, but like they can hear this, they need to hear this. And so I really see that this could be out there. And it's screw your professor, he was an idiot. They're not always, just because they're the professor, they're not always the right ones around. They can't look into a crystal ball and know that it is going to work or not. So good for you. And I'm like that too, dig my heels in and let it go. I think that I'm going to ask, like, are you thinking of doing like a Baba Skazala too? Because if you have all this information in already and have interviewees that maybe didn't hit the film right now, but there's still more opportunity while we still have them alive, because, if they're already in their 80s and some are in their 90s, they're not available for us for very much longer.
Fantastic question. First off, thank you for sharing. And you brought up two things that I would love to speak to. I would say the first one is actually related to sharing the film with those that you might have in mind right now. It just made me think about I think it was actually one of the first screenings that we had done, in-person screenings that we had done in at Rutgers University, I believe. And it just was really interesting because we had actually quite a number of individuals that were not Ukrainian join us for the film. And I remember there was one gentleman Italian gentleman who had family members that had been part of World War II and really kind of could touch upon a lot of the moments in time that were talked about in the film. And it was just really unique to hear that he himself, with with his family members and with the stories that he had heard, as well as the stories of those of his Polish friends and otherwise, long story short, how all of it kind of came full circle, and he was able to really understand so much more about his friends and his family that he had never understood before. And so I think it's really unique that you say that, you know, they're not necessarily Ukrainian, that they're more Americanized, if you will, but yet that there is that importance to sharing it, and there is so much more to understanding, not just for being Ukrainian, but for everybody else that may have had a familial hand, a cultural hand, a community hand in that time period to really understand what had happened. So thank you. Yeah, I think that that's really unique and special. And then to speak to the other part real briefly, and I didn't really share this in the beginning, so I'm glad that you brought this up. But the film actually never really started as being like this one-off project of the film. It actually had started off as being a supplemental part to a much larger project of doing a more of an exhibit, if you will, of the really of this time period of Ukrainians in the DP camps of World War II, of sharing, you know, all the information and the documents that could be accumulated. I had this I really was envisioning that it would be more of like a museum exhibit that could really share not just oral history, but written history and, you know, photographic history, and a compilation of all of these elements in a given space. And then, you know, really what it came down to is that the one form of media that would be able to actually get all of this into context, and not just be, it could also be a main form, but also a supplemental form, was film. Film was the one thing that we kind of looked at, or that I looked at and said, I can get X, Y, Z, and A, B, and C all in one place. And that really, I think that this needs to be, as you were saying, like of utmost importance given the timing of the situation. So I still am of interest in doing a Baba Babi's Gazala too. And as you said, we actually have quite a number of interviews that, you know, given the timing, we're unable to fit into, we'll call it Baba Babi's Gazala 1. So there is that interest. It really is just the financials and the timing that kind of put things a little bit more on hold at the moment. Because it wasn't it wasn't exactly the cheapest endeavor, I'm not gonna lie, to go about this. But with the support that we've gotten, and with the donations, and with the sponsoring, and with, really honestly, it has been tremendous assistance. We have managed to pull through and prove my professor wrong, and tell him that yes, it can be done. Naughty words add in here. And so, yes, I think that I still have my hopes of making this much more of an exhibit, much more of an actual, what I think is a respectful space for everything that occurred, for all of those that, you know, had been part and participated and experienced and otherwise in this time period. And really showing appreciation to everything that they had done, not just for those themselves during their time period, but also for us, and giving us the opportunities that we've been able to really have. So, yeah, Julie, please.
Matei, there was also a question from Gloria in the chat. Gloria, I don't know if you want to ask your question or speak to it.
I think you might be muted, Gloria. Bottom left-hand side of the Zoom screen here.
Okay, I unmuted myself.
There we go.
Thank you. Yeah, I sing in the choir with a lady in her 80s, and one day she was ill, and I I guess I stopped by her house, and or some occasion we talk on the phone a lot during COVID. And she told me the story of her parents, and of course, her and her brother getting out of Ukraine. And it was wonderful. And I said, Lida, you know, you could call this story The Sewing Machine, the Donkey, and the Cart. I mean, it was so resourceful. It was so scary. It was so real. It was so, you know, running from fascists, running from Soviets, hiding under, I don't know, rubble and things, bartering because the mother could sew, kind of kept them alive. Anyway, I said, Lida, you really need to record this story. It's just, you know, it's a novel in itself. And then also her sister-in-law, I mentioned it to her sister-in-law, and the sister-in-law said, you know, mine is even just as good or better. I mean, I don't think it was a competition. They get along very well. But these are two people from Eastern Ukraine that got into this, you know, really horrible situation. And I think they need to tell their stories. I don't know. I don't know how to inspire them. I don't know how to inspire them to do so.
I think that I mean, one of the big things is if it's of interest for yourself, and I say this just because I would love to speak with them. That I'm just going to say that absolutely, I would love to speak with them, and please, if it's of interest to you and to them, to please get us connected. But I think that the one thing that I would definitely share is it's of utmost importance to, whether it's somebody like myself who is doing this more, you know, in this more, I hate saying it this way, but I guess professional setting, it's not important that it be that way. What's really the most important is that even if it's for yourself and, you know, you've had the opportunity to hear aspects of the story, you're in a position where you actually are able to grab your phone, or if you have a recording device otherwise, and, you know, if you guys are, I don't know if your situation is allowing this at this point, but if you're able to go and actually see her, speak with her in her own home or otherwise, even if it is over Zoom or such, feel free, start asking questions. And I think that a lot of times, like, I don't want you to maybe feel like it is an interview per se, because I think in many cases that the term interview gets a little bit blown out of proportion, but these are, you know, in this case, they feel very open enough to speak with you about it, and it's a wonderful opportunity for you to be able to not just you know, record it for yourself in a way, but actually record it for them and share and be able to provide them with something that is, you know, they can have for their family and those in their family to come. And it can be something that it really just is conversational. There's, in many cases, it's unnecessary for you to necessarily have questions. I think that that's one thing that I was always told, is make sure you have a list of questions. And I'm not going to lie, I had questions and I'd ask the questions. And then I find out that I forgot to ask 50 other thousand questions because I was so A, B, C, D that I never really opened my mind up to actually what was being told. And I think that you've already shared something really, really amazing with the fact that you can title it and the fact that you have the emotions that are connected with it. So again, if it is of interest, I'd love to be in touch. So please feel free. I will send you my email here that you can you know, get in touch with me here. But also, please do take advantage of the fact that you can, you know, you can speak with them right now and record it. I think that that's really special and something that I think is a very high value.
What kind of recording device should I obtain? Because I'm really a novice at this.
I mean, if depending on the kind of phone that you might have, and Julie, thank you for sharing the email in the chat. But depending on the kind of phone that you have, you actually have a voice recorder application that's usually already in your phone. That would be a great, easy tool. And that's number one. Otherwise, I can recommend Vivian, actually, would you recommend a Tascam? I mean, that's a fairly cost efficient,
Yeah,
right?
a Tascam would be
Mhm.
efficient, or even
So,
like a Zoom recorder, something of that nature.
so Tascam, which is, I'm going to type it in the chat here. Tascam or a Zoom recorder. I mean, either of those, if you are able to look those up either on Amazon or otherwise, either of those are really simple, cost-efficient recorders that are fairly compact, easy to use, and are really great for just recording sound. But again, if you do have a smartphone, most of them do have a voice recorder application already integrated into the phone, and that would make things very easy overall.
I have a senior smartphone and I'm far dumber than it. So I don't know what it has, but
Well,
I'll check it out.
I'm happy to help out. If you do have, please do let me know if you can see the email that's in the chat. But yeah, I'm happy to help out with that if it's of interest. But definitely, like I said, do take advantage of the fact that these are individuals that are already opening up to you and are willing to share their stories, because that is something that is really special. And I definitely say that knowing what it feels like to have had the opportunity to speak with those who are, have actually never told their families anything before.
It's really special. You're right.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. If you guys don't mind me taking just an extra minute here, I do want to actually, still have a couple more questions come in, but just to talk about that, in two or three separate cases in the interviews that I've done, I actually have had the opportunity to, in one case, speak with somebody who had actually never told their family anything, just refused to share any of that information. And I sat down in the room with them, and I'll make this quick, and we started chatting. And the questions started coming, and the story started rolling, and then person by person, other individuals from the family started filtering into the room and just started sitting there and listening. And we ended up going for about 3 or 4 hours. And at the end of it all, the daughter comes up to me as I leave, and she actually just starts bursting into tears, and she just ends up saying to me, like, he never told me. He never told me any of this. I don't know why, but he never shared. And I'm sure you can understand that I was a little speechless, because I was kind of like, I wonder why. I don't know, like, but at the same token, that's something that makes it really, really special. And in the other case, I've also had the opportunity to sit down with somebody, hear their story, and there's actually somebody who is in the film. Actually start to feel like they were like my own grandfather in a way. Somebody who not just spoke the story to tell me a story, but actually told me a story to share certain values, morals and values, to share family lineage in a way, and to share like, it almost felt like to share the meaning of life in his words, the way that your grandfather or grandmother, your family member, might share what the meaning of life is. Not just to tell you, to give you an answer that is A or B or black or white, but really to tell you a little bit more about what it meant to feel alive, so that you have something to hold on to. And in a way, this gentleman actually felt so much like my grandfather, and you know, God rest his soul at this point, that he, you know, his family actually invited us to, invited us to his funeral. And I think that that really is, I think for most people, you'd find that very surprising, considering that you knew the individual for only a couple hours. But to be able to share a story so deep and ingrained into the community in a way it's really is special. Ingrained in like just the essence and of being together, really. I feel like there's something really special about that. So that took me a little bit more than a minute, but I do want to keep, you know, we have a little bit more time here. I do want to ask if there's any other questions that we might be able to answer in the time that we have left. Again, feel free to raise a hand or sneeze. Anything works on Zoom. I do want to share that, oh, yes, proszę. Just the unmute is on the bottom left of the, there you go.
I don't have a question, but I do want to say that I really, really appreciated the structure of the film, and in particular, the historical perspective. I mean, there's so much confusion in terms of the Nazis coming into Western Europe, the Russians coming in, and I think you did an excellent job of explaining it in a very concise manner. And I think it set up the whole film really well, because you had the historical perspective, you had the archives, really appreciated the animation, but also some of the kind of almost, you know, reconstructed scenes, and then the interviews. So I think that the structure of the film really spoke to me. And it's like with my own family, you know, I could fit in where, you know, their stories into the other stories. I was particularly pleased because my parents actually lived in Northport. And so many of the people that were interviewed were from Northport. And so I have seen them. And so, but I mean, the structure of the film, really, I appreciated it. I thought it was just really well done, very concise, very, and also the fact that he had so many different elements to it in terms of the media. So I really thank you for that. I think that it brought back many memories of many stories. My parents are gone now, but the stories remain, and it was just a wonderful film. And I've kind of routed that film to other people that I know, and I know they have watched it as well. So thank you very much. It was a very, very well done, well thought out process. It's very appreciated.
Thank you. That it's very appreciated as well to hear that. I think that I did a lot of learning as far as you said, the difficulty really on the timeline, the history. It took me, I'm not going to lie, it took me a couple of stories to really start to understand the timelines of how and when everything happened. And that kind of going back just slightly, the questions, going that A, B, C, D, going from question to question, with all the new information that each interview brought, I realized that it's not worth going A, B, C, D. And that's when I started to realize that it's really important for me to get more of the understanding of what each individual was having at what times, because that's really what brought the whole history together. I'm not gonna lie, I feel like if I actually went 1, 2, 3 on all my questions and I just went through a set list, I still to this day and with the film would probably have not actually depicted the history the way that it is in the film. And I think that that's, you know, again, obviously not doing everybody justice, because it wouldn't be correct. But yes, I do appreciate everything that you said very, very much, because that is something that you know, it took me some time to learn.
It's complicated.
It is very much so, especially when you do realize how really, I mean, how borders of Ukraine and had changed so much during the time period. I mean, it makes everything so much more difficult. So, But yes, thank you. I really do appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
One of the things that I learned over the course of probably the last few years, my dad and I have the opportunity to actually go through with one of my aunts photographs from the time that he spent at one of the camps in Austria. And we looked through over 100 photographs. And despite the fact that I had heard all these stories growing up, I never really, I guess, dove into it. And so, you know, we'd look at these pictures and I would think to myself, here are these people who have just escaped war. They have nothing, whatever they managed to throw into those pillowcases on the wagon. And they're in a camp, and yet they're organizing themselves into scouting groups and choirs and drama clubs, and they're going out there in costumes performing to each other. There are photographs of their scout troop going on hikes up into the Alps with nothing but like shorts and shirts on. They're in the Alps. So the incredible, not resilience so much, but the creativity among these people was amazing. And I finally understood one of the things that I guess had never clicked in my mind. When they all were sent to the camps, they were Ukrainian, but the world didn't know that there was a Ukraine. And so because of that whole political situation, the West didn't know what to do with them as displaced persons. So what happens in a displaced persons camp? You end up there, and then after the war is done, they send you back to your home country. That's what you do, right? They didn't have a country to send them to.
Right.
And so I finally realized, it clicked in my mind that they were in there saying, we're Ukrainians, and all those officials around them were saying, well, no, you're not. What is that? That doesn't exist.
Mhm.
We're either sending you to the Soviet Union, or we're sending you to Poland, or we're sending you to Romania, and these people were like, no.
Yeah.
That's not our. And Marta Dichok's book, I know you mentioned it in your credits. I had read that, and all those things all of a sudden clicked, that these people had no home to go to. And the West didn't know what to do with them.
Right.
That was like really amazing to me, that there was no policy.
And I think it's really interesting you bring that up because, with Operation Kill Hall, that's spoken to in the documentary, and I'm sure most of you know about it at this point. But also, if you ever have the opportunity to go through the short little animations that you might be able to find of kind of Ukraine as a country going, how it looks on a map, you'll find that it's really interesting to see that Ukraine just disappears at certain times. It's just gone. And that with exactly what you were just speaking to, Nadia, and understanding how Operation Kill Hall, and if you really think about the politics and you put everything together, you start to realize exactly what you're saying, Nadia, that there really was no home at the time, even though Ukraine never ceased to exist, especially as far as like our nationality and what Ukraine means for us in our hearts, and what it means to communities. That never dies, and it never will. I don't care if you take the country away, Ukraine will always still be there. But from the outside perspective, for some reason, that's very difficult to see and understand. But yeah, I think that's really a unique aspect, and you bring in the little things that really matter, and really bring a film like this, the documentary, to kind of a heightened, a deepened understanding, I guess. Really it takes a more thought to really get down into it and understand these little nuances that impact the time period, but also who we are. Yeah, I just a big thank you for sharing it, because it really has a lot of meaning. And I do want to thank everybody for everything that has been shared this evening, and for being here again. So with that being said, I do want to again thank you all. We're a couple minutes over the allotted time, but I do want to say thank you. Zoriana, do you have another question real
I
briefly?
just, not really a question, just, yeah, just thinking that there's a generation that is going to, like, my parents experienced this, right?
Mhm.
And maybe someone else's parents experienced it. But obviously as generations go on, this information and this knowledge is gonna be further and further away from them. And so this film is like, this documentary, it is just so critical. And like for me as a youth counselor, I'm in SUM, and like I'm trying to get my kids to watch it. Interesting, because my kids that I work with right now are from Ukraine, but they come from an era that they didn't know this history.
Mhm.
They are learning it from me and from SUM. And I know other people belong to Plus, so you understand the same kind of situation, that we have these young kids now that the further they are away, the less they're going to know, and these things are, and so this is really important to perpetuate. And the second, when in talking to my older son Daman about the documentary last night, he mentioned the Keel Hall operation, and he came out and he said, "Mom, I'm shaking." He goes, just to understand what that term is, means these people were, I'm going to use the word screwed, because really I don't know any other way to put it, that keel hauling in and of itself was a form of torture done repetitively to people on a ship. And so just naming an operation in that term, just let you know what was happening to the people.
Yeah.
That they were just not, it was a black hole.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, if everyone doesn't understand the term, then they may not understand how impactful it had to be with that operation. But yeah, so thank you again. And, bravo to you and your entire crew and all of the supporters and your production team. I've been involved in the documentary. I know how much work goes into it. So congratulations on that. Keep it up.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And once again, I do want to thank you guys very much for being here this evening. I appreciate you guys for joining us and for asking questions and for participating. It's actually been, every time it's so much fun, even if it is virtual, just to get to meet new individuals like yourselves, and for sharing all the stories. I feel like it brings not just us together, it brings the documentary closer to us. It starts to expand upon everything we talked about. We get to touch upon so many new aspects of it, and it's one of the things that makes community so amazing. So thank you very much for being here, guys. I really, really appreciate it. And once again, Nadia, for helping us out and for making this possible, to again, the Ukrainian National Women's League, and to the Kurhangsen Self-Reliance, a big thank you. Appreciate you guys for doing this.
Thank you, Mate.
and,
And I hope eventually we can get this out into a real live screening. So yeah, because and in terms of people needing to see this is a primary source document. I'm sorry about the noise.
It's okay.
Kids should see this as part of their World War II classes, in high school.
Absolutely.
Because it's a human interest story, yeah. So thank you for doing this.
Thank you. But with that, yes, I will bid you all adieu. I really appreciate you guys being here once again, and the recording will be made available. So please, again, if you have my email in the chat here, please do write an email if you'd prefer to have yourself covered up. But you all are beautiful. You are amazing, and thank you again for being here. With that, I'm going to close everything out. So I do want to send one more bid you adieu and one more thank you. I will keep saying thank you. So, all right, stay safe and stay healthy, everybody. All the best. I'll see you guys soon.